Beginning transmission. This is the Chaos Community Broadcast, a show about failures and how to navigate complex socio-technical systems so you can surf the chaos instead of succumbing to it. For a recording of this broadcast, as well as all of our previous broadcasts, type chaos.community into your web browser or follow us on Twitter at CCB Transmission. I'm your host, James Wickett.
And I'm your other host, Casey Rosenthal.
Well, today we have a brief pause in our series on the book Chaos Engineering, System Resiliency and Practice, because we have with us the orchestrator of Chaos Community Days London, the global head of Amazon Video Availability and Scale, the crowd goes wild, Olga Hall.
It's an honor and pleasure to be here. Thank you for inviting me to be on the show.
That was a bit much, James.
You told me to spice it up.
Yeah, I did, but that was a bit much. Olga, thanks for being with us today. Before we get started, I just want to clarify for our audience that Amazon does not hold the license to, nor are there any current plans for Amazon Video to stream the Chaos Engineering documentary.
It's a very important clarification. Thank you for that.
Just wanted to make sure that's okay. Are we rolling again, James?
Yeah, we've kind of been rolling this whole time here.
Okay, interesting. Okay, Olga, streaming video at Prime. You run the video availability, scale, and operational excellence program, or I've heard it also called Aesop, as in the fables. Do you believe that availability and reliability are a fairy tale?
Of course not. Availability. It's a interesting question. It's a funny question on the surface because, of course, you would expect an answer to be, of course not, right? But I think under the hood, you're asking something a little bit deeper. And over my years of working with various teams, various technologies, what I've learned is that motto that we recently heard, right, that nines don't matter when users are not happy, is so true. And I see a big switch, especially lately, to focus on self-healing services, recovery in services, automated recovery in services, worrying about that and figuring out what programs we want to have in place and what tech we need to have in place so we have that resilience in our systems is probably more important than pure focus on nines. And I believe this is where you're going with your question. Did I read your mind?
Yes. Thank you for reading my mind. So your question, your answer spoke to levels of the question that James hadn't even considered before. So that was refreshing. So Amazon became an economic powerhouse by...
Every once in a while, Casey likes to ask these questions that he thinks are real hard-hitting, or I don't know, but sometimes they end up being a little preposterous or just not appropriate for the broadcast, and this is one of those times. Let me get us back on track. Olga, can you tell us your favorite chaos experimentation story?
Of course. Last year, we were preparing to launch English Premier League. It's an exclusive event that we were streaming in December. And one of the things that we were doing along the way, we were asking ourselves this question: what do we do to make sure that between all of our engineers and all of the teams involved in launching this event, we have instant muscle reflexes and near real-time and real-time responses to figure out what's going on, what kind of failures we could be looking at when we see early signals of distress. And the things that we decided to do simulations. So what we've done for that, we got a test stream from English Premier League. We told the team when roughly we're going to run those simulations, but we didn't tell them what we're going to do. And it ended up to be a super fun experiment. As you can imagine, days ahead, we did analysis, we did certain things like brainstorming what kind of risk we can inject, what kind of failures we can inject. And I will never forget that moment in time when one of the experiments that we ran was taking out hosts out of the service and see what happens, how fast our teams would be able to pick it up. And almost instantaneously, both our teams and our partners in AWS were pinging me saying, "Hey, what's going on? What kind of experiment are you running?" So that was super cool. Our teams really loved it. It helped us with improving our dashboards and alarming and monitoring and figuring out some rough edges that we needed to tune. So that was super helpful. But the insight that the teams brought from that experience last year is that we want to run these experiments on the continuum basis. This is really not chaos engineering, and resilience is not one point in time experiment that you do or simulation that you do. You're really figuring out your journey on what do you want to do continuously. And super happy this year, some of the teams and many of our teams decided to take failure injections experiments as part of their continuous deployment pipeline. They're running a lot of experiments on that front, so it ended up being a really great journey from simulating a certain set of failures and then taking that experience and saying, here's what we're going to do and make it business as usual.
That's great. I really love that movement towards the continuous verification that you highlight in that example. Did you have was there any friction with either the engineers or management in getting a chaos engineering program off the ground there? How did that sit within the context of other initiatives in the availability scale and operational excellence program?
Well, that's a great question. It's interesting that I hear this question very often with my peers, with another teams at Amazon. So it's obviously a common challenge that we all have to work through. And one of the ways, there's really two things that help us to get things off the ground. In early beginning of the program, when we were setting up this program a few years ago, we were super clear and super intentional, reaching out to our business partners and getting them on board and basically discussing with them, what do we want to experiment with, why this is important, what benefit it will bring to our customers. And we showed examples and we were super transparent about the control nature of the experiments that we're going to run. And we were super transparent also about closing that loop and basically saying, here's what we've learned and here's what we were able to prevent. I think the most important part is getting your business on board, showing them the plan, the progress, the control factors, and then bringing that learning back and basically building that trust, that talks about how this help improve the nature of the services, how this helps our customers to enjoy an uninterrupted experience. This is super important, step one. On the step two, when you get a little bit more of a bigger scale of adoption, you have many engineering teams involved in participating. That's where the other part of your question comes in. How do you bring your partners along, right? Here's engineering community. They're super busy. They are launching features and product and releases. They're thinking through all of the important pieces that they need to do. So what we've done last year, I reached out to my peers and basically asked them a question. Let's think about goals. What goals on experiments would make sense for you and your team in your chaos journey this year? And let's agree to take some joint goals. There will be pieces where my team will be building technology that you need, and there will be pieces that you own where you're thinking through what specific challenges or improvements on availability and resilience you want to drive. And I feel that these joint goals that we're tracking and working towards throughout the year made a lot of difference this year. So I'm super happy about this approach, and I would highly recommend it to others who are starting or thinking about how to move along and improve their resilience program.
What I like about the way you phrase that is it's almost a foregone conclusion, when you describe about talking with your partners, that they have some sort of chaos engineering practice. And from a third-party perspective, it seems as though it's in Amazon AWS, Amazon Video Prime. It's in the whole organization's DNA to navigate the complexity rather than try to fight it. Is that a fair characterization?
I think what I agree with this here, it is in our culture and it is in our DNA to embrace failure as inevitable and
Mm,
have systematic something that will happen, right? And have systematic programs in place that help deal with this inevitable and put some control structures that de-risk, that mitigate, they do self-healing and all different things that's appropriate for all different teams. If you think about, you know, Amazonian teams in general, right? We have a very rigorous preparation for Q4, supporting, making sure then when the orders are open, during Christmas time, everything works, everything working very smoothly. So having that uninterrupted, happy experience during Q4 has been in Amazon DNA for a very, very long time. What is slightly different about our specific team is, and what we've done differently, a few years ago, we realized that it's for digital media, it's not about just Q4. It's being always on and being always ready because you never know what piece of content is going to be viral, what customers will enjoy, right? And especially urgency of having that operational muscle always ready comes a bit more so on the surface and becomes more important with live streaming, right? You need to have near real-time response, recovery, and bypasses on whatever intermittent issues that you may hit. Um, so I would say that focus on stability, resiliency, and uninterrupted customer experience is a part of our DNA. And I can totally confirm that.
I like that statement you made about the inevitability of failure. That I'm not sure how widespread that is in the software world. Just having that mindset, and it reminds me of a time I was in Chicago. I was at the University of Chicago doing some policy research, and this was in at a time when the basically the drainage in Chicago wasn't very sophisticated. So they came up with a plan in the mid 50s, 1850s, to basically raise the buildings so that they could put a sewer system in and basically raise the city. And Pullman was behind most of this. Well, he had there was another real estate mogul, Charles Gerald Hull, who uh, had some disagreements, let's say, with Pullman. This was Hull of Hull House fame. His daughter ended up leasing Hull House to Jane Addams. Um, but so whereas the rest of the city made it this big spectacle of using jack screws to raise the buildings up, Gerald Hull, I believe this was on Stetson Avenue, his buildings, he just built a sidewalk at the level of the
Hmm.
second story, and then built additional layers on top of the building and waited for the city to come up. He embraced the complexity, the uncertainty, um, which was quite a thing to see in person. Um,
Yeah, there's probably different ways to mitigate risk and considers what you're gonna do. So, right, it's all about, your uh, creativity and scientific method and what path you want to select. It's a great story. Thank you.
Hmm. Now it's time for a word from our sponsor. The attention of the public is called to waterproof lasting serge or cloth boot, which has been thoroughly tested by constant wear during the whole of last winter and spring, giving entire satisfaction, and proving conclusively that when made in accordance with our patent, they are what we claim, a perfect water repellent. Ventilating Waterproof Shoe Company, number 90, Milk Street, Boston, Massachusetts, sold by the principal shoe dealers throughout the country. Get get it now. Great. These sponsors get better.
Olga, do you want some popcorn? James, can you get Olga some popcorn?
Hey, great, of course. Send it over.
Yeah, that's not really my role here on the show, Casey. We kind of talked about that a couple times.
What do you do here?
I'm really here just to kind of keep things on track, which Olga mentioning that. What do you think is the most overlooked part of chaos engineering, and or the part that people have the most trouble with?
I think that we all get excited about experiments and thinking about, how much fun it will be. And I see it with engineers and the peers that I work with. It is a lot of fun to run those experiments, and it is a lot of fun to discover something learning. But there is a second part of experimentation, which is, why are you doing this, right? What do you really want this experiment for? And if you're running an experiment because you already know the answer, and the answer is the system will fail, then it's not worth it. The hidden little gem in chaos engineering is that you have to know your whys, you have to have your hypothesis, and you have to have tested and prepared and have ready the fallbacks so that when you're running your experiments, you're basically figuring out which of these fallback paths and which of these fallbacks work best under which condition. And I think that closing loop on fallbacks and having visibility to all the way from hypothesis to experiment to what have we learned and what are the actions that we're going to take from this, that last part sometimes gets overlooked because the front part is a bit like gaming. It's super fun and exciting. So I think if there is a takeaway from today's talk is think about chaos as fun with science, and think about it that the science part needs to be there all the time. You have your experiment ready, but you have your things that you want to try and answer the questions why you're running it and what are you learning from this and what failbacks you're testing so that you know that you're strengthening either your knowledge or your response in the system.
Speaking of response from the system and fallbacks, I've been having some issues logging into my Prime account. It might be my password. I may have inadvertently changed it when I was doom scrolling through the news last week and had one too many hard seltzers. Can you tell me what my password is? James, this will just take 1 minute. I just need to log back into my account to catch up on Lovecraft Country. Can you just tell me what my password is?
Yeah.
I wanted to watch the
That's all right. I know you guys enjoying this. That's totally fine. I'm just hoping that you'll find your password because there will be a few new shows coming up. I can't wait to new boys season. So keep your eyes open for that, and hopefully you will fix your password before this.
So what's the best way to share a password?
Hi, me again. Yep. This is another instance where Casey asked a question that he probably shouldn't have. So we're just going to skip right through it.
No comment.
Okay, well, let's move over to some call-in questions, Olga. Let's bring in the first question asker right now.
Hi, Olga. I'm really looking forward to season 2 of The Boys, but I'm kind of old school, and so I'm wondering how I can add the commercials back into the episode. Can you help me?
I don't think we ever heard a sentiment like this. Usually it goes all the other way, less commercials and such. I thoroughly enjoyed your question. I don't think the answer exists.
This question comes from Russ Miles.
Hi, Olga. I hope they're treating you well on the podcast. So I have a question for you. How did you find working together on the Chaos Community Day in London? How did you find that experience? working with Casey, myself, and everyone else that was involved in it, and putting it together in essentially your house, in your place in London. How did that all go for you? What was it like planning and putting together an event like that?
What a great question. I think the best thing about working together in the Community Days London in September was meeting a very vibrant community that was super engaged, asking questions, wanting to hear more. We had a tremendous response during the sections when we did lightning talks, and we had various folks coming in and sharing their experiences. Um, and what was absolutely rewarding to see how within a few short hours, I think it was about 4.5 hours, there is a craft of bringing and building community together and connecting people together who were maybe in the past were not necessarily know about each other or knowing what they're doing. Um, I think my favorite moment was when it is at the end of the day, it was well after 6, and we look at the clock, both Russ and I did, and we basically said, look, the crowd is still buzzing. Nobody wanted to leave. A lot number of people who were there, they didn't want to leave. It was really great feeling. I think technology is great when it empowers people and it also brings people together into community. And I felt we had this moment in time where birds of a feather went through that accelerated experience together. So I think that was amazing. And I want to give a lot of credit, Ross, to you as a host for creating that environment, setting it up front, having those discussions open, bringing your humor, bringing joy into this. It was a lot of fun. We should do it again.
We should do it again. And thank you again for hosting. You made everything happen behind the scenes there, and it was a fantastic event. I really appreciate that.
Thank you. Thank you. It was a lot of fun.
I too am looking forward to a Chaos Community Days in London.
I don't think we have a budget for you to go, James. That's not in the cards.
Well, maybe I'll zoom in, Olga. Maybe we could do that, or
We'll have to go virtual. We have a solution, James. Don't worry. We will figure it out.
okay. Well, that concludes our show. For a recording of this broadcast, as well as all of our other previous broadcasts, type in chaos.community into the web browser of your choice, or hop over to the Twitter and follow CCB Transmission. Also, we ask that if you're on the YouTube, please like and subscribe. This is the Chaos Community Broadcast, ending transmission now.